you never really see Captain America and Batman being compared to each other in any extensive way. At least I haven't seen that. And it's interesting because I think that this is a pairing that contrasts each other in a more direct and intimate way than any other comparison of characters that I have seen in comics. And this is interesting because you see that happening all the time, right? Superman and Batman, the Punisher and Daredevil. Comparing different types of heroes is an essential part of not only the comic book mythos, the mythologies created within the comic book narratives, but also among the fandom, as we love comparing the different characters. And we do that because by comparing two distinct different visions of heroism, or even just types of powerful beings, like when we compare the Joker and Batman or etc., whenever we compare two distinct versions of powerful mythological archetypes, we can then learn more about these different archetypes in the contrast that they make against each other. So it's not really about who is better, Captain America or Batman. They're both amazing characters, I think. But it's about what can we learn about Captain America and about Batman when we compare these two strikingly opposite figures against each other. And I know what you might be thinking. It's like, well, Pilgrim, why do we have to compare Captain America or Batman? Why not just the standard, Batman compared to Superman? Isn't that the same thing? Isn't Superman and Captain America basically the same archetype? I mean, they even have the same color scheme, right? They're Boy Scouts, they have those old-timey values and stuff like that. They're optimistic about human nature, more or less. They represent the best of us. And they're superhuman, in capacity and stuff like that. And yeah, I understand that seeing from that perspective. It seems that Captain America is basically the Superman archetype, but that's not true. That's actually not true at all. If you actually see more closely, you can see that Superman and Batman don't actually contrast with each other that much. For one thing, they're both from the same respective social class, basically, right? I mean, Kal-El, the L family that Superman comes from, is basically the equivalent of the Wayne family, but on Krypton, right? Like, Superman is basically Batman. He's the version of Batman from another planet, and he just has a different personality. He doesn't really contrast against Batman in every way, both being from wealthy families, both having become orphans and being ripped away from their legacy in that regard. Both even live in solitude in their big mansions. Superman lives in the Fortress of Solitude in the North Pole, and Batman in the Wayne Manor and stuff like that, They both have a lot in common, basically. While when we compare Superman and Captain America, they actually seem to contrast each other in every single way. For one thing, Captain America does not come from a privileged background. He starts from weakness, and from there he has to find strength. So he has that underdog quality to him, which both Superman and Batman do not have. And most importantly is that even though Captain America has that Boy Scout goody two-shoes attitude of Superman, Captain America is actually a killer. Being a soldier, it's his job to engage in that from time to time, even if it's a last resort, even if he's not like the Punisher that actively seeks to kill. Captain America does not shy away from that, while that is a key aspect of Batman's character. So Captain America, being the optimistic vision of the future, the man of tomorrow kind of element as well, like literally, since he's superhuman and he represents what humanity could become, or what America should be in Captain America's case. The fact that having to take a life in dire situations is not something that is shied away from in his archetype is really interesting as well. So that's another element that we can understand of why his archetype has developed over the years. Even though he started taking lives in his first issues when he first started out as a character, he then developed into a more, not a pacifist, but a character who saw all life as sacred, even the lives of his enemies. While Captain America, that's not even an issue with him. Even in the Marvel movies especially, like you see Captain America waving guns around, for instance, and shooting without even thinking twice. He's got a job to do. And he's gonna do it, reach to the end. He has to defend lives, and sometimes being a soldier, you have to do some things that you wouldn't normally do. While Batman, that one rule is crucial to him. And I think this is a key aspect of why they're so different from each other. Why is it that Captain America can retain his image of a pristine Boy Scout hero, but he technically has blood on his hands? And Batman, he has the image of being the more broody, more edgy version, but he's the one who's actually technically has an archetype with his hands clean. And I think it's because of what these two characters actually represent, and how our culture and society then relate to what they represent. So Captain America, he is the idealized version of the modern man, the soldier. And Batman is the idealized version of the medieval man, the knight. Captain America, being the underdog, having that archetype of starting from nothing and then becoming something, that symbolizes the social mobility aspect that's so important to modern life. The fact that you can always make something of yourself, or in this case, be turned into something through the machinations of scientists. But still, that's the idea that through your virtue, you can then become worthy of ascending from your social status into something higher. While Batman, being the medieval man, is about someone who was born into high status and then has a responsibility to use all of that he was given to fight against the evils in the world and to make the world a better place for those in more vulnerable positions. Not to mention that Captain America, being a modern man, a soldier, his entire identity is then associated with his duty to America. It's in his name, Captain America. And while Batman, being a medieval knight, basically, in the modern world, his responsibility is more due to an abstract value, justice, chivalry, a code of honor, which then guides his behavior. He doesn't have a duty to any entity exactly, but more to a greater truth, like the knight errant who goes around saving damsels. Batman's responsibility is mostly to Gotham, right? The city, his fiefdom, making Batman kind of like a baron with a responsibility with the people in this limited area. Instead of the flag of a nation, he carries his own heraldry, right? The bat. That's his heraldry, the same way that the knights in medieval Europe had lions and tigers and bears, oh my, all over their coat of arms and stuff like that. This is exactly why Captain America is a killer and still seen as an upstanding guy, while Batman, for us to be comfortable with his character, he needs to become somewhat pacifistic in this regard. And this is because in our modern society, or should I say maybe our postmodern society even more so, we are very uncomfortable with the idea of a man like Batman carrying out executions on his own authority, right? This is not something that we would actually like and condone in our current society. While Captain America doing it in the name of a flag, doing this in the name of a nation, that is something that we, as modern and postmodern people, are a lot more comfortable with. And so that's an interesting thing of why we see that. Even though deep down we know that even if you have to do something as dark as that, as taking a life, doing it in the name of defending the innocent is okay and it's fine. Defending yourself, defending a life, it's a last resort, but sometimes you have to do that, right? And so why wouldn't Batman do that to the Joker? I think, again, there's many different reasons, and I think the Joker and Batman themselves become like this philosophical, like each represent different philosophical ideas, and so it becomes kind of difficult to make Batman end the Joker's life when it feels like the Joker would win the argument if he does. Even though I don't really agree with that, I might discuss that in another video. But I think deep down, the reason why Batman doesn't do what Captain America is capable of doing is just because we find that deeply unsettling. We find that idea deeply unsettling. And maybe Batman as the medieval knight archetype is something that we still love and enjoy. And the fact that he's immensely popular, he's got to be the most popular superhero of all time, even more so than Captain America or Iron Man. I think Batman, he isn't just a big heavy hitter in DC, but I think as superheroes in general, I think Batman is the definitive superhero. It goes to show that even in our era, the archetype of the knight and the aristocrat who then lowers himself to suffer in the name and in the place of people in more vulnerable positions in society is something that we instinctively admire and cultivate in our culture. Which ends up leading to very hilarious and contradictory moments of cognitive dissonance with Batman. Like there are some very funny moments, like in Batman Begins, basically, where Ra's al Ghul, played by Liam Neeson, basically offers an ultimatum to Batman. He's like, "You have to execute this guy who killed his neighbor. You have to kill him. Your enemies do not have compassion. You shouldn't have compassion." And then Batman's like, "No, I'm not gonna kill anyone. That's wrong. Killing people is wrong." And then he learns that they're gonna try to destroy Gotham, destroy his city. And then he's like, "I'm gonna do what is necessary." And he basically causes an explosion that destroys the whole monastery up, And it's like, dude, okay, so you refused to end a life. And as a result, you thought that the only way that you could get out of that situation was to cause an explosion. It's like, okay, well, you just killed everybody in that place. It's like, no, bro, I'm not killing anybody, right? it's the explosion. The explosion is killing all the people around. It's like, no, bro. At the same time, though, I think Batman being a medieval archetype means that I think he embodies possibly higher virtues than Captain America does. Something more abstract, something that goes beyond a nation, I think. And I think that's why we also like the idea of Batman not taking a life. I think that his insistence of being so highly skilled that he doesn't have to take a life. He's such a genius in martial arts and such a whiz with weapons and stuff like that he doesn't have to actually take a life. Just, that's how good he is. That is something that you see being very important for people. The closest example that I can think of this would be Saint Gabriel of Our Lady of Sorrows, who is considered by some to be the patron saint of firearms. So goes the legend that he was so good with a pistol that he saved this tiny village from 20 bandits just by shooting a lizard far away. He shot the lizard in front of them so precisely, which scared the bandits away. So he used weapons, but he didn't take a life. He didn't have to. He just showed them that he was so good that they just ran away. And Batman kind of resembles that a bit, effectively making Batman as an archetype more of a holy character, more in line with like some greater values, I think, than Captain America, who is a little more down to earth, a little more grounded, where the dark reality of the world kind of forces his hand a little bit more so than Batman, which is ironic considering that Batman is himself cloaked in darkness. Being kind of a gargoyle-esque figure. He represents the figure that through his darkness scares away greater darkness. Which is why both Batman and Captain America are fantastic archetypes in our culture that we can use to then analyze the difference between the medieval man, the medieval mindset, and the modern man, the modern mindset. Because Captain America is the perfect embodiment of modernity in a way. Not post-modernity, which doesn't believe in anything and anyone can be anything. I think that's... But Captain America at his core is a perfect example of the values in the modern world. And how inspiring it can be. Because the modern world is all about ascension. It's all about progressing to higher and higher states of being. Which is why the modern world tends to really like the underdog. Because the underdog, someone who starts out from a position of disadvantage, but then overcomes that, and then ascends to a position of advantage, is precisely the narrative example of progress. Which is essential to Captain America, which is why Captain America starts as a weak man, and then through scientific progress and through his own willingness to improve himself, he then becomes more than what he is. He ascends into a different social status, but also into a different type of man. While Batman is about fulfilling what he was always kind of meant to be, fulfilling his role that he was kind of born into as a Wayne, as like the closest thing to American royalty or American nobility. Being the descendant of a family who founded Gotham City, he's basically doing nothing more than fulfilling a social expectation. Although, since he lives in a modern context, he has to do that while wearing a mask, because his modern world cannot accept him as a knight. He cannot fulfill his duties as a knight out in the open, because the modern world wouldn't accept that. The modern world would want him to adhere to the modern state bureaucracy, modern laws. And so for him to fulfill his duty as a knight, he has to do it clandestinely, and then pretend to just be a billionaire playboy. Right? Because that's more acceptable in the modern world, right? Being a useless billionaire who just spends his money on women and fast cars, that's acceptable. But a billionaire then becoming a knight, becoming a warrior for the people, using his social status as a means to then help people in a more direct way, fighting the good fight, as it were, that's a little less acceptable in the modern world, or in the postmodern world, or whatever world we live in right now. That's interesting. I like that about Batman. Thing that I really like about Captain America is that I do think that he is the best example of quote-unquote post-humanity, right? Using science to manipulate the human existence. I think that the way it's done in Captain America's storyline, I like that. Because he's not really post-human. He's not really transhuman. He's actually superhuman. Science is used as a way to enhance human capacity. So the human power, the human existence, is then brought to its full fulfillment in Captain America, to what he could be. He's not being changed to something else. He's not being manipulated. He's not becoming like the Man-Bat in Longstrom, right? Which Batman has to fight. So Batman, who is a man who wears the heraldry of the bat, has to fight one of his antagonists, sometimes in some storylines, is the Man-Bat, who uses science to then become a different thing, violating his sacred human essence. At the same time, though, Captain America is representative, ironically, of something that's more in the past, I think. As time goes on, the archetype of the soldier, of the man who joins the national army and then through tax money becomes something more. That's the modern soldier, which is different from the knight who through his own wealth becomes the best warrior that he can be. I think that we're actually heading to a time where we're shifting historical cycles, as I keep saying in my videos. I think we're heading into new feudalism and new medievalism. So ironically, although Batman is the past, the medieval man, and Captain America is the present, the modern man, the soldier, since we're in post-modernity and we're also heading into new medievalism, I think that Batman is also the future. He's also the new medieval man. I think in the future, a lot of the great warriors that we might start seeing will be men who inherited great wealth and then used that wealth to then invest in their own training and then became great fighters. And we see that with the rise of private security forces, private security training. You can pay for your own military training these days. And I think that we will see the Bruce Wayne types surge in the real world in the future, I think. As nation states start to break down, I think. This is like you guys can watch my Cyberpunk 2077 video on the rise of new medievalism to understand more what I'm saying. But what I want to conclude from this video is that despite their differences, both of these characters, Captain America and Batman, represent very inspiring and very important ideals, right? Becoming something more than what you are, facing your limitations to then overcome them and change your position, improve, progress, and also fulfill the traditions that you inherited and try to be the best version of yourself by using everything you've been given, all the privilege you've been given, for the good of others. And if you were born in a difficult position, I think Captain America can be a very inspiring archetype for you. And if you were born in a more privileged position, Bruce Wayne, Batman as an archetype, is a very good ideal. So yeah, that's the video. I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but I didn't actually have a script for this one. I kind of winged it, improvised, because I'm so busy and I'm going to start traveling soon, like in just 2 days. And I didn't have a time for a script or not even editing the video. Like my friend of mine's doing all the editing now. And so yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really felt like I had to do this video though, in the short amount of time that I had. So I hope you guys could get some enjoyment in this quick reflection on these two characters that are very important to me. I think in my younger days reading comics, I think these were the two characters that I liked the most. By the way, I wanted to thank everyone who commented on my last video on religion and science fiction. I thought that your comments were great, especially from those who didn't agree with me, especially from people who are atheists or agnostics. Most of them replied very well, and I really wish I could partake in the conversation. But again, I'm really busy. I really wish I don't even have time. But however, I'd like to give a shout out to two YouTubers that I think you guys might enjoy when I don't have time to post my own stuff. The Brothers Krynn, who made a very good video on Link and his romance options. I really liked that video. It was really good, I think. And the Anime Archeologist has some very good videos on anime, stuff like that. You have to endure some of his humor a little bit, and it's kind of, but I like some of his videos as well. So if you guys want to check them out, I'll leave the link to their channels down in the description. So, thank you all for listening to my ramblings. For real this time, this was a real rambling. Oh yeah, thank you my patrons. Thank you patrons. This one's for you. Thank you very much. Have a great day, my friends.